I'm Thomas. I chose these classics because they still have something to say, and I thought you'd enjoy hearing them. If you like this book, feel free to give a thumbs up and subscribe for more. H.P. Lovecraft was a master of the strange and the uncanny, a writer who carved out a unique niche in the realm of weird fiction that continues to inspire readers today. Born in Providence, Rhode Island in 1890, Lovecraft lived through an era marked by rapid industrialization and change, a time when boundaries between science and superstition were beginning to blur. Dagon is one of Lovecraft's earliest published stories, written in 1919 at the dawn of his career. It remains a powerful example of cosmic horror, a genre that Lovecraft helped to pioneer. The story delves into themes of ancient alien gods and horrors that lie beyond human understanding. These elements resonate with contemporary audience, making Dagon a timeless tale that continues to captivate and unsettle. Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft, published 1919. Must go to all the contributors who have written in and offering their horrific tentacles to produce articles and artwork for these pages. Keep the stuff crawling in. If this issue makes me seem a little more smart arse than usual, don't be surprised, because I've just returned from Games Fair where I was in the company of many other editors. I guess some of their fanzine lingo may have rubbed off on me. Therefore, if you see the word plethora in this issue, don't be surprised. May I say that the other fanzines do need support, so if you have a few spare pennies, why don't you send off for a few? I'll be at Dragon Meet and Games Day this year, so if you see someone carrying @PileOfDgains, do come and have a chat. By the way, there is a full report of the atrocious Games Fair activities by the Cthulhuids elsewhere in this issue. I apologize if I have missed any fanzines out in the Fibes column this issue, but I am afraid that I do not have space to include them all. You will also notice the arrival of something calling itself Blackmail in this issue, so do try and give the column some support. I will not bother to print those letters which just praise Dagon, but instead will publish those criticisms and questions which I feel strongly about, as well as any suggestions, ideas, or news which I feel will interest other KOC players. Any Cthulhuid jokes you may dream up will also be gratefully accepted. Nevertheless, do still send in your comments on Dagon. I am still very interested to hear your views. Right now, a quick plug. Jeremy Nuttall is running the Role Gaming Fanzine poll. For a zine to be eligible, it must be concerned with role gaming and be published in 1985. For a voter to vote, she must have bought the zine. You may vote for up to 3 zines in the following categories: Best New Zine, Best Chat Zine, Best Hardware Zine, Best AW and Layout, Best FG Coverage, Best Scenario, Best Article, Strangest Zine, and Editor of the Year. You must name both the title and issue No for the article and scenario categories. You need not vote in all categories. Send your votes to BIS, Jeremy Nuttall, 49 Longdown RD, Congleton, Cheshire CW12 4QH Some Film News. For all you gorehounds. Day of the Dead, Romero's new masterpiece, has finished filming. It does not complete the supposed trio of zombie films after all. The tale features a zombie called Bub, who is trained to combat other zombies. He is the first of the elite corps, which the few survivors have trained to help kill off the menace of the undead. Ghouls versus ghouls sounds very interesting to me. Can't wait for it. For all you film fans heavily into Dario Argento, I've got some disappointing news. Alan Jones, writer for Starburst and film critic of The Macabre, tells me that Argento's latest phenomena is a load of rubbish, now that comes from a bloke who loves Argento and all his other films. Bird with the Crystal Sepine Fee, Oat Nine Tails, Deep Arus, Oat A Swaina Lil Just, Dave to Wait See, plus if I feel Lovecraft a literary anomaly, unjust piece of writing. Readers who Lovecraft's won are Attenby Pace's 5. The relative lengths of his 3 short novels will produce Heinty, and RHPL wrote something about the size of any 2 of his novel Wrong, which he titled A Description o' the Town of Quebec, New France. Later, Ether, His Britannic Majesty's Dominions, M. Aided, plus It is an enormous guidebook to and history of the town of Quebec. Love it after taking a $12 three-day rail journey to Quebec in 1939. Autenor Lovecraft wrote it without thought of publication. Designed solely PVT is perusal, and for the crystallization of my recollections, I, as he wrote, R.Y. Owen James Morton. Indeed, it did not see publication until 1976, too, is Frenia, when one considers that Lovecraft was a professional writer who never other money except by this profession. The production of this treatise, Scenes Indeed, it will seem stranger still when it is realized that this was far F, very ODQ, the only material Lovecraft wrote without thought of publication. Love be been one of history's most voluminous epistolarians. His published letters me large volumes, 3 E3 T. Joshi, the Sati scholar who is working on a definitive Lovecraft biography, has estimated that the complete extant correspondence may follow 100 vol. 4. Of course, not everyone or everyone's heir preserves all the letters Taya receive, even from Lovecraft. Robert Barlow, for example, tells us that soon after Henry S. Whitehead's death, all his files of correspondence with Lovecraft and others were destroyed. 4. This presumably extensive correspondence cannot be all that ND perished. Just how vast HPL's letter writing was no one will ever know. What survives is enormous, and the longest letter itself covers over 50 pages of print, v. So Lovecraft was a professional writer whose bulk of work was never intended for print. This outre fact becomes stranger when coupled with the information that a great deal of what Lovecraft intended for print was material for which he never sought payment. This was the work of Lovecraft, the amateur journalist. In HPL's day, amateur press associations thrived in America. Basically, they produced fanzines. Though, like today's fanzines, they dealt with the whole range of literature, at least in subject matter, though not necessarily in quality, rather than specializing in one small field of interest. Dagon must be one of the more extreme examples of this specialization. Physically, too, they differed from modern fanzines in that, before the days of the mimeograph, let alone the photocopier, these fanzines had to be typeset. Lovecraft poured a great deal of what energy he had left after his correspondence into these amateur publications. He worked as an administrator, including a stint as president of the United Amateur Press Association, editor of his own journal, The Conservative, attuned Providence Amateur, and for a while of the organ of UAPA, the United Ur-Am, as a prolific contributor both under his own name and a host of bind various noms de plumes, not all of which have been established beyond doubt. The face scarcity of surviving copies of these journals makes the estimating op of HPL's amateur journal virtually impossible. Quite certainly the publications is of greater bulk than the fiction, upon which that fiction, or at least the stories the Stot Iota Velnberaten Otis Pale Socia Sedney publications. When the British Not at Night EA Weird Tales, including some of Lovecraft's, the P though I have been woe to Suthers, there was a scheme to sue the publishers, payment being made to discover any reference to either the court case Gund ed in I-928, at example was the 11 fated book publication of Jess Oot copies plus Wes haphazardly distributed in the fora of Hambool I nearly half the print stapled into paper covers, and as uncut, unbound sheets 1 bull was properly bound and published in 1962 WD. He, PEAE2AWD. There being no sound income to seek money through the pursuance, Jess, rather as a ghostwriter, play would submit to complete, if badly written, manuscripts which Lovecraft, publishable form. Much of this was material in which HPL could neither take or interest. He would refer to this material as bushwork. This phrase likened it to hacking one's way through the bush while making a pun on the name of one of HPL's ghosting clients, David Van Bush, the author of Spunk, How to Lick Fear, WD H1, for which Lovecraft provided the verse at least. Not all of Lovecraft's ghosting, or as he called it, revision work, was so uncongenial. It included a fair number of weird tales. amongst them Wes C.M. Eddy Jr.'s The Loved Dead, which caused such a scandal that Weird Tales was nearly suppressed, and the issue containing the story X was withdrawn, into other revision tales, those written for Zelia Bishop, Hazel Heald, and William Lumley, H1. He infiltrated portions of his mythos of the Curse of Yig. Lovecraft wrote to Clark Ashton Saith, "This specimen is well nigh a piece of original composition on thy part, since all I had to go by was a synopsis of notes describing a pioneer couple, the attack on the husband by snakes, the bursting of his corpse in the dark, and the subsequent madness of his wife. All the plot and motivation in the present tale are my own. I invented the snake god, the curse, the prologue and epilogue, the point about the identity of the corpse, and the monstrously suggested aftermath. To all intents and purposes, it's I. So we come to the final anomaly in Lovecraft's career, that some of my story, his best stories appear, even today, not under his own name, but under those of his revision clients. It not only makes Lovecraft a literary anomaly, but renders the task of determining exactly what Lovecraft did and did not write an extremely knotty problem. However, the way in which Lovecraft the bibliographer is apt to shed his sanity is another matter, and should be the subject of another essay. Notes H.P. Lovecraft. Selected Letters, Volume 3, Sark, Arkham House, 1971, p. 266, 14, in H.P. Lovecraft. To Quebec and the Stars, Ed L. Sprague de Camp, Donald Grant, Henry S. Whitehead. Jumbie and Other Uncanny Tales, Arkham House, 1944, p. 9. H.P. Lovecraft told Frank Belknap Long that it was nearly, see Selected Letters, Volume 2, pp. 99-100. It first May and July 1941. Mehoopany, Pennsylvania, 1924. Weird Tales for May, June, July 1924. No relation of Mythos Stories, T. H.P. Lovecraft. Selected Letters, Volume 3, pp. 29-30. Peter F. Jeffrey. Well, I hoped you enjoyed the above article. I certainly did. Please try and let me know your views. I am particularly interested to know whether you feel that this type of material is suitable for Dagon readers. I have a couple of similar articles in the pipeline, and Peter tells me that he has several other ideas for similar articles. 51 Selected Letters, Volume 3, pp. 290-342. Finished in February 1927, appeared in Weird Tales, and not to be confused with Brian Lumley, the modern author of Ims de Vermis Mysteriis, Tibi Magnum in Nominatum, Signa Stellarum Nigarum et Bufaniformis Sadoque Sigillum. So begins one of the many sinister invocations contained within Ludwig Prin's De Vermis Mysteriis, or Mysteries of the Worm. Prin died at the inquisitorial stake during the Brussels witchcraft trials of 1493. He proclaimed himself the sole survivor of the ill-fated Ninth Crusade, exhibiting musty documents as attestation of proof. Although it was admitted that a Ludwig Prin had numbered amongst the gentlemen retainers of Montserrat, Prin was declared a crack-brained impostor. Even though Prin was a descendant of the original warrior, Prin claimed to have gained sorcerous learning whilst held captive among the Wazanis and wonder-workers of Syria. He was finally declared insane after recounting encounters with jinns and ifrits of Eastern myth. His final years were spent in the Flemish lowland of his birth, in the ruins of a pre-Roman tomb that stood in a wood near Brussels. Peasants shunned the area, saying it was haunted by invisible creatures. On full moons, people and animals would disappear, and blood would be found on the crumbling altars near Prin's home. However, when soldiers raided the tomb, the supernatural entities, weird instruments, and curious compounds could not be found. Even the most sadistic tortures failed to extract a confession from Prin, so he was thrown into the dungeon to await trial. It was while he was in the prison that Prin penned his dark tome. How it was snuggled past the guards is a mystery itself. At his trial, Prin offered no defense, answered no questions, and mocked his jailers. It is said that even as he died, Prin laughed at the inquisitors. History does not tell what happened to his remains, but it is rumored that they were stolen by an associate of an old wizard. A year after Prin's death, De Ver Mysteris was published in Cologne, but was quickly suppressed, though a few volumes were distributed privately. These copies were in turn transcribed, and although a later expurgated copy was published, only the original Latin version is accepted as genuine. Many skeptics insist that even the Latin version is a fake, written by someone trying to use Prynne's infamy to make money. The Mysteries of the Worm deals not only with alchemy and necromancy, but with the worship of Yig, the father of serpents. It concerns the god's influences and power, as well as detailing the many cults of Yig that existed around the globe. It also alludes to two other related gods, Darkhan and the serpent-bearded Beatus. Recommended spells: Contact Yig, Summon Star Shambler, Bind Star Shambler. As Prynne was an alchemist, it is possible that brew space mead and create the power of Ibn Ghazi are also there. There may also be spells relating to necromancy and the dead. Keepers who own Chaosium's fungi from Yugoth's scenario pack may also like to include Summon Child of Yig and Bind Child of Yig, see page 46. Editor's notes. These copies were in Latin and extremely difficult to read since the tome's spidery script was in the most part illegible. Through the centuries, the few elect who have actually managed to translate the tome still ponder on its lore, whose secrets are known only to a few, who for obvious reasons refuse to reveal their contents. In 1971, letters and manuscripts were discovered relating to a recent of the Dark Tome by James Robert Boone in Salem, Mass. Certain references allude the foul worship of that being known to the Enli, J+3C, Iton Few as Yog Sothoth. Similar spells may be in this corrupt volume linked to this fine Wehe god. I point out that Andy refers to these spells in their correct form as presented by the original authors, namely Robert Bloch, and not Chaosium's often mistaken rules book, which refers to these same beings, star shamblers, as star vampires. Therefore, keepers wishing to include these two spells should consult the spells Summon and Bind Star Vampire from the KC Rules Book. Further detail: J is JN's RC AC4 SDB concerning De Vermis Mysterius and the worship of Father Yigme, the Shambler from the Stars by Robert Bloch, the Ois Yig by Zealia Bishop, Jerusalem's Lot by Stephen King, from Night Shift by same author. Cthulhu in Mesoamerican Religion by R.L. Tierney, Cthulhu Companion, Dr. Phoebus prescribes. Hello there again, inmates. I have just received the delivery of horrible things from the postman. Let me delve into the sack and see what's on offer. The Fiery Cross, Issue 4, includes an article on languages in AD&D, a look at chivalry and sorcery by Paul Mason, a long letter call, Vikings reviews, a Warhammer scenario, zine reviews, and more. No KC. This issue costs 50p from Tom Stacy, The Millhouse, Rays Hill, Harwich, Nemmer Chesham, Bucks, HP5, CWJ. Next Stop Jupiter, Issue 2, Usual Chat, spoof cartoon on the X-Men, letter cull, more Irving rubbish, short fiction, reviews, articles on Go, The Trooper, the SA-80, a new magic item for espionage in James Bond 007, and more. This issue also incorporates Party Number 7, a bargain for 50p from Jez Keen, 1 Glenfield Road, Stockport, SK4 2QP. Demon's Drawl, Issue 11, the best AD&D hardware zine available, includes articles on the Order of Wizards, Dragons, Letter Cull, AD&D Scenario, Campaign Update, Reviews, Artwork Tips, Zine Reviews, Essay on Aleister Crowley, The Only Dull Piece, short stories, and a look at the new Citadel releases. If you play AD&D, this zine is a must-buy. Costs 55p from Jeremy Nuttall, 49 Longdown RD, Congleton, Cheshire, CW12 4QH. Imazine Issue 10, mainly a chat zine originating from Warwick U, contains at very lengthy letter cull. Very good it is too. Music, zine reviews, goat philosophy, Paul's views on where the direction of computer RPGing is taking us, hobby news, and the usual postal games. This zine is for the intellectuals only, and a definite buy if you like a witty, chatty, and intelligent zine catering for the hobby. An interesting buy for 50p from Paul Mason, Room JCZ Kirby Lodge, Roots Residence, Univy of Warwick, Coventry CV47AL. Monstrous Perversion Issue 1 contains articles on the vampire and RPGing, nothing, a Toon scenario, KOC adventure, which is quite EU here. Borigis on Dinosaurs, Isons 9 costs £1.0, a bit steep due to the long but interest and a couple of reviews, and Civ. Though I would never have thought so, not fact that the printing was XP. Recommended for those who have trouble reading small, in this case microscopic type. From Peter Blanchard, 4 Hollyacre, Pray Heath, Mayford Woking, Surrey, GU22 OBL. Protoplasm, Issue 3, nicely put together zine. Includes Sequest, an AD&D adventure, Long Journeys and Adventures, zine reviews, essay article on obtaining food when on the Berlin Wall, intended for use with spy role-playing games, along with @equus scenario, which looks very interesting, and Letter Call cartoon, essay on alignment in YRPGs, and for the Cthulhuoids there is Cthulhu Cathalling, a collection of new EA magic items, books for Co-C, and hilarious half-page interview with High Late Greats, AEA Lovecraft from Beyond the Grave. ARG, costs from Ivan O'Brien, 200 Victoria Road, Rathgar, Dublin 6, Ireland. Recommended. Os A in CLC Sir Era. Oi C Fenland Fog, A Call of Cthulhu Adventure by Stephen H. Wand. Nario has been designed for a party of 2-4 rookie on Into the World of the Cthulhu mythos, however integrated into an existing campaign to provide investig remote fenlands of Southcast, Lincolnshire. Introduction. The following SC investigators as an introduction, Fenland Fog, can be easily in towards a little leisurely excitement in the setting. Gedney Drove End, Lincolnshire, England. Early 1920s players' information. The tranquility of Gedney Drove End, a remote Lincolnshire village on the southwestern shore of the Wash, has been broken by the recent disappearance of 4 villagers from Gedney Drove End and outlying homesteads. It is not simply the disappearance of members of the community this year that has caused a stir. 2 villains, none of them have been seen since. Both agers went missing in 1920, 2 in 1919. The local constabulary and Boston detectives have been unable to provide explanations for the disappearances. Amy are completely baffled. Local superstition coupled with recent events have filled the villagers with dread. Investigators can learn of the mystery by one of 3 ways. 1. They could be passing through nearby towns such as Boston, Long Sutton, or Kings Lynn and stumble across a relevant newspaper article. 2. Or investigators could see a newspaper report in one of the big papers, be it in Arkham, London, or New York. 3. Or finally, the investigators could be drawn into the area by means of a letter from an old university college friend currently residing in Boston, Lincolnshire, along with a cutting from the Holbeach Herald detailing the above story. The letter could be a cryptic message implying that the article only gives half the story, and as the friend is aware of the investigator's love of puzzles, looks forward to meeting him once more. If the latter alternative is used, the local friend is Mr. Gerald Carter of 3 Herward Avenue, Boston. Mr. Carter can be either a sleeping or active NPC. Cabier's information. Offshore from Gedney Drove End, approximately 1/4 mile out into the Wash, there lives beneath the brown, muddy surface a colony of deep ones. The deep ones have interbred with a family inhabiting an old coastal mill house. It is this family, depraved and utterly evil, that have been causing the recent disappearances, whilst delving deeper and deeper into the occult. Ancient stories and superstitions aid the family in ensuring that the locals are fearful of their affairs. The family are the Tenbys. This evil lot kidnap locals to provide random sacrifices for night gaunts which they have learned to summon. The sacrifices are smeared with phosphorus to give them a spectral glowing appearance before being strung up from the old gibbet on Gallows Mound. These bodies, coupled with old stories concerning a phantom, said to haunt the mound which is situated next to the old mill house, deter villagers with an inquiring mind, allowing the Tenbys to continue their pursuit of evil without hindrance. General information: Mr. Gerald Carter. If Mr. Carter is being used in this scenario, the following info can be obtained from a reporter at the offices of the Holbeach Herald in Holbeach Town Center. Carter has an interest in the occult, and it is this interest that has drawn him to the Lincolnshire fenlands, as the abundance of ghost stories was immensely appealing. Gerald will explain briefly that nearby Long Sutton has a manor house haunted by an headless stable boy who runs through the master bedroom wielding a pitchfork. It is 8. Gerald Carter. Continued. Holbeach Mies St. Matthew's Inn has had 2 unusual inhabitants war fa rear 1608. They are a Puritan couple who were put to death under mysterious circumstances. A near said to visit the rooms of the unfortunate guests. Peruse a Book of Revelations. Gedney Drove End. Gerald explain a based upon Diance phantom known as the Mill Wraith. This rumor is field adjacent to Oct Weingay, a moss figure said to walk Gallows Mound, a concerning the recent events at Gehi Una Aini a Ki a E2 Lee Canes of the locals' disappearance. It is claimed that a phantom type B sits on Sheena Winko from the old gibbet on Gallows Mound, glowing in be found. These effortigene morning, there is never a trace of any body. Ki o e ain heapy abingrin are mainly reported by villagers returning from an Avern Furk rea. Disregard the stories, son. Therefore authorities choose to ace. However, all this is food and drink for Gerald, who sees a future novel in the Miss Gerald. Will also point out that many local libraries contain useful information, Ishi area's history. This is another of the attractions that the Fenlamies hold for hin. T2AC2 ol C, 2 ol C ol C ol C forensi. If the investigators choose to delve deeper into the area's past, a successful library use role will be required to learn the following information. A separate role is needed for each book. Pat's Poise St. Bené's Abbey, seat of Fenland learning. Little is known about the date St. Bené's Abbey was built, as relevant documents were destroyed in the abbey's fire. It is known that the abbey occupied the site Ciro Ne Gedney Drove End. It was eated on firm ground, surrounded on 3 sides by 3 marshes and the Wash on the east. A secret causeway run from the abbey to the mainland. In 1016, the Danish Sing Canute appeared and the abbey was laid under siege. The 2-month siege ended when the Danes, having located the causeway, attacked the abbey. The inhabitants, starving and diseased, stood no chance as the Danes put the abbey to the torch, killing all inside. It is said that the abbot, with his dying breath, cast a curse upon the future inhabitants of the area. This, however, is not documented and is only hearsay passed on by word of mouth. So A. Lincolnshire, a concise history. Prior to the 17th C, much of what is now Maches were underwater. In the 17th C, Much €1. This has laid to a supply of more land for grazing cattle, but has resulted in considerable altering of the coastline. St. Wunge. Bent's Abbey, once a remote coastal building, destroyed in 1016, whose site is now a quarter of a mile from the Wash, was eventually built upon in 1335 when a much-needed windmill was provided for the Gedney Drove End and Gedney Marsh. The mill was built at the cost of $125. The first miller to occupy the mill was a Mr. Wilfred Tenby, V., known as Holbeach, Lutton, and Terrington. H of the land was reclaimed from the Wa parish records, Gedney Drove End. No skill roles are required to learn the following. The parish priest, Rev. Alfred Thomas, will allow the investigators free access to the records. Gare Seasbiny Wallace, born 0 Wilfred Tenby, son of Jacob Tenby and Elizabeth Tenney, 25th, 1815. Married Mary Keel of Terrington, St. Clement on January 2nd, 1602, Germ 6th, 1858, cause of death, murder. Mary Tenby Nee Keel died November 10, cause of death, natural causes. A. Hole BKH Herald, arcs through the Herald's records. H. No verbal skill roles are required to see the investigator should state that they a successful library use. before learning the wish to look as far back as 1850 following information. Equi a Swell Beach Herald, Records Herald, June 29, 1858, Gedney Drove End and Gedney Pars, Aus of the much revered miller of the villages, a Mr. Wilfred Tenby, aged 4. PD, the local constabulary are investigating the death as Mr. Tenby Dyke, E.A. Swell Beach Herald. Been described as particularly violent and mysterious circumstances, which has not been seen in the area for many years. Mr. Tenby, whose E.A. Swell Beach Herald in November of last year is survived by his 2 sons Samuel Ang Francis. 9 E.A. Swell Beach Herald. Villagers of this area are very wary of strangers and generally keep themselves. A fast talk or oratory role is required to obtain each of plus eels, psi b ethlu and famiri alon items of information. Any attempt at bribery may result in strong rebuke or 7% intervention if the individual's suspicions are aroused. L Police 1. The individuals who happen to have been taken were apathetic towards the O, and the curse of the abbot is the cause of their disappearance. A. Holbia 2. The mill wraith is the phantom of the old Wilfred Tenby, whose poor soul cannot find peace. 3. Wilfred Tenby's spirit has returned to haunt his family, who instead of carrying on with the milling business, have allowed the workings to fall into disrepair. E4. Wilfred Tenby's 2 sons married local girls and lived under the same roof as the mill house. Since then, the Tenbys have withdrawn into seclusion. The older Tenbys are never seen. The only members of the strange family seen are the young men who visit the village for supplies or to visit the son for an evening's carousing. 5. The Tenbys are an evil bunch who cause nothing but trouble when they visit Tom. They often finish up in the local lockup. The last occasion a Tenby was locked up resulted in a strange rumpus at the Gal that would be last August. The keeper may decide to roll a D10 and decide which info is learned by each successful use of the appropriate skills, until all, if possible, the above are learned. Investigators wishing to follow up the rumors concerning the rumpus at the Gal will be pointed in the direction of the Holbeach Herald offices, where the following additional info may be learned upon a successful roll of library use. Holbeach Herald, 1902. Gedney Dyke police reported a spectacular gale breakout on Tuesday night. The complete north wall of the 1-story lockup was destroyed from the outside, allowing one prisoner, a Thomas Tenby of Gedney Drove End, to gain an early freedom. The police believe that a ram of some kind was used to break down the wall, but as yet no evidence has been found to support their theories. Other prisoners in the cells at the time claim to have seen through the 3 feet by 4 feet hole in the wall gigantic fiendish black figures glowing with an eerie green light. The police spokesman, Inspector Foster, explained that all the men in the cells at the time had been arrested on drunken charge offenses, and has condemned local publicans for continuing to serve men who, quite obviously, have drunk more than is good for them. Needless to say, Inspector Foster dismisses all stories of fiendish, glowing creatures. Gedney Post Mill. Gedney Mill is a typical post mill of the area. The mill is of wooden construction built upon a base of stone. Steps lead up to the mill, and when operational, these steps would be lifted to turn the mill to face the wind. PTAOEESE small ADS. Small adverts can be placed at the cost of an 18-piece stamp per line F-typed matter. Ads will appear in the next issue if space permits. Warted second-hand Cthulhu Companion, Shadows of Y Oath and Curse of the Chthonians. Telephone Simon on Slaw 41149. CPAOAS 10 Mill Basement. A dark moldy smell permeated the air of this old. Against the left-hand wall are many old sacks of grain. The orla snave completely been bitten through. These contents appealing onto the shrew have obvious a evidence of vermin. Or there much a. The walls opposite and to the right of the shrew contain a of tools, gay and chisels, screw rivers et upon brackets on fortla, ager agvin, oi-handed cross-cut saw. Also hanging up are Uten Walla yethes and sickles. Stacked in one corner are a selection of oak meat gears covered in rust and cobwebs. Enoga investigators inspecting the sacks on the left-hand wall and removing them will discover pit they conceal a secret door leading to the altar room. A successful roll upon spot den will reveal that the sacks have recently been dragged across the floor. The altar room. This room is impeccable. He hangs behind a stone altar to the left of the going Capente de Piates tail, two gigantic creatures, part frog, part fish, and with a grotesque humanoid appearance. If a sand roll is failed, 1d3 sand, PTS will be lost by simply viewing TEA roll means no sand loss. Investigators peck the altar they will. Upon respot hidden, notice a catch at the back. If the all arena get to the left of the catch will spring open. Inside the niche in the altar lies a small Morse scroll of parchment. Upon the scroll written in Latin is the spell Enchant Blade. To learn this spell requires 1d3 week study and a successful read Latin roll. A failed roll requires a further 1d3 week study. Opposite the door to the altar room is a staircase leading up to a trapdoor which is bolted. Investigators proceeding up the staircase and unbolting and opening the door will see that it leads out onto the roof of the mill base, and will see the wooden structure of the mill above then. Let the mill. The workings of the mill have fallen into disrepair. The floor is covered with dust and filth. Even the slightest observations will reveal that there has been much comings and goings in the room. A successful spot hidden that in one corner, protruding from a few empty grain sacks, lies several lengths of rope. One length is fashioned in a 13 emote noose. Also beneath the sack is a locked wooden box. The lock is strength 8. Inside the box are 2 pots of luminous, glowing phosphorus. Phosphorus is inflammable. Investigators smashing the box open will attract the attention of 1d4 tenbies, who will come monsri with pitchforks and sickles. At the mill is a 19% chance that for each 10 mins, that the investigators spend searchings will appear on the scene. Leans the ladder which leads up to the next story. It will be apparent that due to the dust upon the rungs, no one has been PGM for 5 up in the second story. All the dilapidated workings are rust-covered There are many sacks lying around, all empty. If a successful spot hidden a small book will be seen, strapped exo the XECAATATAP. Ev the Tembe House, B, GD, Post Mill, C, the Post Office, D, Hardware Store, E, Parish Church, F, Vicarage, G, the Sun, Public House, H, the Police Station. Call of Cthulhu is a role-playing game published by Chaosium Inc., Box 6302, Albany, CA 94706. USA and produced under license in the UK by Games Workshop Limited. -12 SSET Fenland Fog GD Post Mill Search at night. The chance of Tembies appearing at T is 20% each night. Roll once. If they do appease a EO10 sate frightened villager, bound, gagged, this J with them will be a struggling fry rea affice for the high town, coursed in a captive, taken for use pritvicently in making their sneak rolls, they will not be spotted, -E tembi 8. E will be taken into the mill, daubed with the phosphorus, the no rewante hiking place, and placed around the unfortunate victim's neck. 3 Tembi will then drag the struggling figure to Gallows Mooney, where she will be strung up to the old gibbet. The 3 niece will then return to the rest of the group in the altar room, where plus evil bunch will proceed to summon the night gaunts. In order to witness the Tembi's 2 activities, the investigators must succeed in a sneak roll every 10 minutes. The procedure for daubing and stringing up the victim will take 30 minutes. If investigators allow the victim to be left hanging from the gibbet, they will each lose points of sand. Due to a feeling of guilt and uselessness, loss is automatic. Needless to say, it will be impossible for the investigators to follow the Tembes into the altar room without being detected. If the investigators stay hidden, whilst the night gaunts are being summoned, there is a 2% chance that the night gaunts will detect their presence and then seek them out. Details regarding the night gaunts, including the relevant sand loss, for viewing then should be consulted from the Cthulhu Rules Book. If the party are spotted by the Tembes, if seen by the Tembes, the investigators will be the targets of killing by this Isle lot. The Tembes will do all in their power to kill the investigators. If the party are within melee range, the Tembes will attempt to slay the investigators themselves. However, if the investigators are fleeing from the mill, the Tembes will summon the night gaunts, and once bound, the creatures will be instructed to seek out and destroy the intruders. Wilfred Tembe's diary. The dirty, aged journal written by Tembe's scrawling hand at first details orders that have been received from local merchants and brief notes on the miller's success. It also notes sightings of various types of birds, especially wildfowl, by the man who was quite obviously an ornithologist. However, the diary soon begins to reflect over his wife's change in both appearance and behavior. The anxiety begins with the miller describing his wife as adopting a grayish pallor to her skin. Later intrudes report her receding hairline and strange protruding eyes. It is this condition of the eyes that prompted Tembe to suggest that she see a doctor, as he worried that she may have glandular problems. He explains that her reaction was verging on violent refusal. One of the later entries reports Wilfred awaking early one morning to find his wife had disappeared. He left the house and after scanning the area with his telescope saw her heading towards the wash. His assumption was that she was sleepwalking. Entries at this time also show a distress of his two teenage sons' behavior. He decides to confront his wife with the problem. The following day's entry is that of a man grief-stricken almost to the point of insanity. His wife had finally explained to him that she had 2 months before their marriage, some 18 years before, been abducted by horrific toad-like creatures, which carried her off to the marshes and tampers with her. She feels that this occurrence has damaged her and has possibly affected Samuel and Francis too. The final 2 entries in the diary suggest a paranoia over his 2 sons' strange, evil behavior, and in one of them, Wilfred announces that he will hide his journal and consider taking his problem to the local priest. His final entry, 45, dated November 9th, 1857. Any character reading the above entries must roll against their sand or lose 1d4 PTs of sanity. A successful roll will still result in 1 point of sand loss. The Tenby House. The Tenby House is the second largest house in Gedney Drove End, the vicarage Wenneth the largest. Its style and size reflect the wealth and status of a 19th century EE. The original building was added to by Samuel and Francis Tenby after the death of poor father. 1414. If the investigators, the Tenby House, continued wash house. This room is a bare ended from the ceiling. 2 windows occupies a shelf for light after D and sample light and an ovary are I the hall. Clothes pegs are situated on the wall at the foot of the third stairs in this square room. The staircase leads up to the house. The floor is red tiled, its fake rake's pace. 2 other doors lead off. The lounge has a linoleum-covered floor with 2 large fireplaces. Watercolors of Fenland, Densey, Pirmuroli in front of the breasts. The furniture is utility but comfortable depicted on both chimney kitchen. The bright kitchen is similar to the wash hoe whitewashed. It is a warm room with a large blackenata in that it's red tiled and which leads into the garden. Standard furnishings or E-Reese tie knives, cleavers, and an assortment of E.A. Osiedley pans, sturdy table stands in the center of the room. Quipent, a large dining room. The dining room is a bright, airy room, furnished. The floor is linoleum covered, and the walls are papered with Regency Stenier plus deer. Lamp is suspended above a large oak dining table of sturdy design and Olaya library and study. This single room is very comfortably furnished. A large oak leather-top desk occupies the area in the front of the main window. The drawers of the desk are unlocked and contain writing paper, pens, ink, etc. In front of the fireplace are a leather-backed settee and 2 armchairs. To the right of the fireplace in the alcove are bookshelves which house volumes on many subjects. There are many books on the subject of birds and bird watching. Some volumes cover the history of Lincolnshire and the Fenlands. On one shelf are books appertaining to milling, the craft and its history, along with several ledgers detailing the mill's accounts. Anyone with an accountancy skill of above 20% will realize that until the death of Wilfred Tenby, the mill was a very profitable line of business. Among the ledgers is an ancient-looking volume. The cover is untitled, but the inside title page shows the book to be called Garn Fragments. The details can be found in the Cthulhu Rules book. The book contains 2 spells, Summon Nightgaunt and Bind Nightgaunt. First floor. The upper story of the Tenby house is not our Privdara utility furnishings, although with the rest of the house, UA been made to make the accommodation comfortable. All 3 Pengnum 8 occupied. From the upper windows, a good view of the Fenlands Purdy is at night, as during the safest time for the investigators pace I lay the investigators of the day, the Tembys are busy around the house. Rust preset in IE sneak rolls every 10 minutes to avoid being heard remarkable. Furnishings in all the rooms the Tembys say rig wheel a show or come face to face with an et eyes long a san ritsu epsinkio receding hair live. Seer park matai upon the fee f a mech weak chin and stumpy nose. The older Ganafe investigator looking upon Anna E. necks and all possess an overwhelming fishy 00 I spy san loss. A successful roll East adult Tembi must make a san roll. Failure res SW411 result in no loss. So Wheel will not be able defeating the Tembys, the assy ifo EC Nes Bass 1. Fair this way rich a. So we a fishy zero's way of defeating the Tembys a $4.50 deep ones. It will all ski BS. Sotek decent citizen with the spews to an end, peepist any other D in one strike and bring 411 cease. The deep ones land-based colony C of the Nightgaunts 11, Surtur of local villagers. The appearancy Utuna Christ Miller, walking into a police stee to the asylum. Sam a theory is the quickest tick, 15 or a 5-4 Ted fee. Iset Ale 1, the investigators will have to be completely ruthless and fast. Any B11P uppy A Annie the 10B feel threatened by the investigators' snoopings. Word will take pass to the colony of deep ones off a whore, who will then employ the aid of the Thai bully boy of the Shagotha Low dispose of the threat. Idia up to the per decide how this mythos be incorporated into the game, and well as the number of the Shagoths, etc. Details of the Goths may be found in the O Flea Hulan boy. A resourceful party could, if the keeper allows, use their knowledge upon finding the Garn fragments, and summon the Nightgaunts to Dimpome of the Evie Tomby's foe. Them, Thea is a great risk, but then again, no solution is free of rink. Should the Tenbys be disposed of successfully, there is no convenient underwater passage leading to the Deep One's colony to allow a quick and only way of expending them too. Therefore, the threat of the Deep Ones may rear its ugly head once more and years to come. Or the Deep Ones may leave the wash completely to reappear alas. Where the defeat of the Tenbys in this scenario is in success and should be rewarded as such. At gain of 2d4 Sam points 46 ample payment. Along with the investigator's feeling of well-being and satisfaction of solving yet another hideous puzzle of Aventa. J. Conclusion Mary Tenby, after being abducted by the Deep Ones prior to her marriage to Wilfred Tenby, became a Deep One. Their 2 sons therefore bore the same affliction, whereas Mary Tenby's human instincts overcame the deepness influences resulting in her teaching, all to her husband. Her sons felt threatened by their father after their mother's death. As a result, the Deep Ones offshore were consulted, and a Shoggoth was sent to dispose of poor Wilfred Temby. The two sons were then free to devote all their time to the pursuit of evil and the occult. They used the rumors of phantoms and Abbott's curse along with the superstitious villagers as a foundation for their own activities, and bolstered these rumors with their own evil actions to deter intruders from their land. Keeper's notes: the different possibilities for success has been discussed under the heading Defeating the Tembys. The investigator's slaughter by Shoggoth is an obvious failure, but failure also results when investigators who solve the mystery do not leap into action and prevent further tragedy. Therefore, once the party realize who is behind the abductions and killings, they should suffer a 2-point SAN, loss for each further killing until the problem is solved and preventative measures taken. Statistics notes. Stats. For the Deep Ones, Shoggoths and Nightgaunts are all as per the Cthulhu Rules Book. The stats. For the Tembys and other villagers are for you, the Keeper, to decide, as only you know the strengths and weaknesses of your players' characters, and can formulate opponents who will be fearsome and dangerous without being nigh on impossible for rookie investigators to overcome. The end. OEIC CCI error rulier releases error releases error releases release air releases release air releases release air releases. Direct from the tentacles of Mark Gascoigne, Shades of Terror is the title of Games Workshop's next scenario pack, due out in the summer, written by Marcus L. Rowland. The tome features a 1980s campaign with sections on modern-day characters and weapons, professions, etc. The pack contains 2 small adventures, a revised Trail of the Loathsome Slime originally in WH, plus a completely new adventure, plus a large 8-part scenario, The Shadow Over the Moon. The book is 72 pp long, plus player handouts, cover by Terry Oakes and interior Gelos by Kevin Bulmer. The latest tome Kosk material has apparently been rejected by Shikayam and refused in license, and will probably now appear as a universal scenario. Release Air releases reviewed by Carl Ford, as you must know by now, Granada Paperbacks Omnibuses. There are 3 volumes in total. Pie at the Mountains of Madness Fall I price £2.50, just reissued a series of HPLR Dagon Vol 2 price £2.95, The Haunter of the Dark Vol 3 price. At the time of writing this, I Am Mountains of Madness contains the Dexter Dard. Both are 2 of the one, and the former is, to my mind, one of his best tales. At the Mountains of Madness tell us of the expedition undertaken by the Miskatonic University to the Antarctic, in search of a previous group led by Prof. Lake, which came across an unknown species of life form and then disappeared. The expedition is led by the narrator, Prof. of Science at the university, together with his colleague Danforth, and a re-team of others. They set off. What they discover is a plateau covered with gigantic stone structures, the ruins of an old city once inhabited by the Old Ones. Of Lang, through strange carvings on the wall, the party discover the history of the strange species and come across the ancient horrors which eventually destroyed the race. The case of Charles Dexter Ward tells of Charles Ward's investigations into the sinister past of his ancestor, Joseph Kerwin, who fled Salem, Mass. At the time of the witch trials of 1692. Ward discovers that his ancestor, along with 2 other powerful magicians, were practicing magic on a grand scale, attempting to conquer by both time and space. Gaining access to his ancestors' black tomes and ledgers lead is a bargain, though it makes me woomier where Granada are going to print all tales which were left out of the original publications, i.e. Dreams in the Witch House and the Randolph Carter tales. A must for those keepers wishing 20 learn more about the mythos. Fag Dagon is, as I have already mentioned, unpublished at the time of writing Tor 2. I will assume that it will contain all those tales, collected in earlier printings, same title. If I am correct, this volume will contain Dagon, Polacus Werk Beyond the Wall of Sleep, The Doom That Came to Sarnath, The Wixie Ship, or Ulthar, Celepheus, from beyond the temple, the Tree Z, the other 7, from beyond the temple, the Tree Z, the other 7, from beyond, the Quest of Iranan, Herbert West Reanimator, Hypnos and HPL's Oi on supernatural horror in literature. It may be possible that book with pissy option DNFO, a figgies here. Hanivara Wesson mates. One cause walled Urnasayul Hill Kek offspring, and to introduce the CISO Irontail, let's semi lines o Texas Asaf ire the Nicronome Ezeli Irani Lim LL Teyu Ali U Ye. Now relate should be Te 10 largely is an A the N Phi Yn determined dows me as 2 of half-shaped hints in the hidden ocean. F's te forbidden inferences, GP1 hid do but, I pred to its last act, a tar a te. The legend of WHEHTOs, SC Ales was familiar to V7 Pei Rumsti his father. But I hey a 2-7 Tremoth Hall was no Metzer Sohn 2. The FH Bote of those happenings pay yi conscious part of my A which formed the final Mneri when L we pay tragedy. Pei began a more likely on LLAA of the English counties. LD7 then to the left of my road and a 2 eens or 2 before me. I saw a youp that somehow suggested a movenful and tears dimmed eye, somewhat too nigh Karach. Surprised the gate was unlocked. Trang inward with a rusty guarding sound, followed a weed-grown Dave toward the spee. Tommy Threek repeated or was open, an OTD man. Eid and one saw B% AENSSS wo SN SF halfch oi S4AK75 CCHS fig li GBOSS man halfch oi SWWW brava. At ML2 the Ramblin' N Tumsa Li YT and AWWIWIE Tuesday A To IE4 FSS22. So a say fat some distance from the window that gave forth the soudery my me F2 MTCAA AGA Ellipsy cataleptic seizures. The third one resulted in VE her death, apparently, for she did not revive 4 after the usual interval and displayed all the old man used stained to METD Lady Agater, the aim GTH, sin tones gi 4 oh he lay 4 year of their marriage, had become the victor anab accident na m arrest rot less easy BFF or all MEUR marks of rigor mortis. Her roby was placed in the family vaults, which 4 of almost fabulous age and extent, and had Breen excavated in the hill behind the manor. Are you not the son of an Arthur Chaldrain? Somewhat mystified, admitted the ascribed paternity. You resemble your father, sir. Mr. Chaldan CPE Pimi and sir. Son Tremoth Tage Wap were great friends HTK we sat san ve a will you know x me ea a we for say nst 8 says. Vanalaver Wika bled by recollections ea soon ov bail. Hideous in human face interment, Sir John, which she had seen in the gloom by her queer's insistent doubt, from wakening from her prolamode, heach to care first arrest, to the finality of soxity and death or sleep. It a verdict re-entered trevi of this fail stooping of bear HCP death was a lay and open. R2 cry cur repre m erutha ruthin is fo 2 ps yn haps. The child was 1 ey ains bell monstrosities ter rushed. USA 4XAS of 4 eras in time to hear wild cry TB and Leagy and see Lady Aga E4 sitting up in her. Coffin poi he bees. Fursh, yecum, fee, had. 1 a sig, John C.S. and white and tay AC enital on all foe on though its were semi-humans lipe nurses and servants, who had seen the Crencher left Tremothral and had refused to return. Sir John withdrew from Soady, and people said that the child was kept locked up in a barred-windowed room. The tall, sockly bent figure, the face that was uned, as if by the trickling of acid. Sir John explained that, despite my fear of intrusion, he would be delighted if I would be his guest. He ned me tea the second floor, passing several doors, dowdies those of bedchambers. 1J was still reviewing day full legend hewing the footsteps, shattering suddenness by a loud say that seemed to M the O that was friend issue for Bard. LTW Ers human or Resnal. Our dinner was served, but in spite of my hunger out not forget my Sasa ignored the voice, cruising be full pit face second Linina Fow, the one with the sealed door. The chamber to which he now admitted me had manifestly not seen used for years, sir. Fee began to apologize, but that there was ie for ye, pre-ec of its owner, had impressed me more printfully than ever. Re the idea fee of worthworm infesti to me suro, we went on to spank of sin. Tons juru for baronet had n it pcad ain yesona et sve arates. In the ace rock by H was announcement. Feared Marper assistance in lock paking the necessary arrangements. Esas disposement of mesmas taras $1 of S5AEA0 T's the thing in the barred room hare of it bes and 20 vers relend. We've had thee that it might break out. It never gave us much larpeared mercifully, have ever been nicked to as we kept it well fed. But for the past 3 been so gad on the hick oaken wall of says, it is recall with distrinous chamber. Say eggs it knew he was going to die, and that the wellish bune that wanted to reach his body, being hungry for other food than tea had said for the fensel, et a gob had Helga to os, a prey to gon will hold. But in clawing like a demon, and one do not uke spare pia cawing the sound, as if the walls were getting thinness of hitchly flock hay. Hadi H. Yes, im Willie Blildeldal, Fen Harper and I ted ourselves between of blackish wood from which the ceaseless cords tie at issue. Intact Selim Sloth Dawn and cocked revolvers, we be on 56 wig divhul. The weent wore on, like the flonly of a dark Suizen stream had grown so accustomed to the clawing voice and the sound had gone oh so log, that I deemed its ever grow po a mere halloon wation, o beach so it was a's knee, o be ho apparent weenring. Egil came without have, however, the blurred impression of a huge, which me doers, essicato crack of a black mains pers revolver, but curtain lowly. Was a hairless and senker-dyed only a rusty cock, but there was spangled with the aritzy odor of burning cloth human face, and Lowe's high weapon it had misfired. Biror a airs ub, pressed the trigger, an. Then the fires went out, and there was only darkness, and then with a single nightmare leap the thing was upon us. Floor, triking table. NS hurled to my head against the yopes AA in the combined light of the fireless dawn. We saw last we returned dear AA semi-human footprints that had, at last we returned reen trodden freshly in the rain-wet soil. Genmir pring of the vox v erodum brie erode odum brie erode to return dear AA semi-human footprints that had, at last we returned reen trodden freshly in the rain-wet soil. He I say a seni p rig they lead to the keys heth clad hill t as at rose behind the oni g aritzi had longed. It was nearly dawn we emerged boi brodum brie aro memory pring of the vox v back to the vox. Fantasy vox the lock had been satrid. Blackmail James W. Taylor of Edinburgh. Abduction is a fair scenario, except the section on local gossip. Surely nobody would glibly talk about an evil rat-like creature that's been running about. Anyone who mentioned this would have to be treated with skepticism by the rest of the town. Having read all the HPL tales set in Arkham, I seem to have gathered a different picture. Arkham crawls with rumors, legends, and gossip of monsters, witches, and demons. Witness the following excerpt from Dreams in the Witch House, the tale upon which I based my scenario. When he heard the hushed Arkham whispers about the irregular human tooth marks left on certain sleepers in that, the witch house, and other houses, about the childish cries heard near May Eve and Hallowmass, about the stench often noted in the old house's dark attic, and about the small, furry, sharp-toothed thing, a familiar of the witch Keziah Mason, which haunted the moldering structure. These rumors are overheard by Walter Gilman after a couple of nights' brief stay in Arkham, and he wasn't even inquiring about strange incidents. Many other tales also give accounts of gossip concerning such monstrous happenings. Clearly, Arkham folk do talk of such things. In your Mythos Hierarchy article, you claim that the other gods rebelled against the rule of the elder gods. As Peterson says in the intro, to co-see, that idea does not appear in any of Lovecraft's work, but was added by later contributors. It depends how you take Peterson's statement as to whether or not the idea occurs in any of Lovecraft's works. If you bother to read The Shadow Out of Space, a She collaboration between Lovecraft and Derleth, you will find immense references to the wars between the Elder and other gods, for instance. When the Ancient Ones, Hastur, Cthulhu, Naruthotep, Azathoth, Yog-Sothoth, and all their terrible progeny, escaped their bondage and joined again in titanic air battle with the elder gods. There are much lengthier descriptions of these wars in this same tale. Even so, just because Lovecraft failed to write or invent certain ideas for the mythos, it doesn't mean that I ignore all other contributors' efforts. For the record, these wars were added to the pantheon by Mark Shore and Derleth in the tale Lair of the Starspawn in 1932. Certainly HPL didn't raise any objections. Re-Ekid, I am concerned about the way you talk about new contributions to the mythos. Be the deities the product of a schoolboy's essay? You seem to be fostering an uncritical view of any creature claimed to be a part of the mythos. Speaking as someone who doesn't use ghasts, gugs, or moonbeasts from Cthulhu Companion because they strike me as pointless creations which add nothing new to the game, this apparent attitude worries me. What apparent attitude worries you? The fact that Chaosium decide to provide fresh additions to the rules and alternative monsters for keepers who could use new monsters? Or the fact that I failed to condemn schoolboys from contributing to the mythos? Jest. Clearly schoolboys can write excellent mythos editions. Witness Bloch's Shambler from the Stars, The Grinning Ghoul, and Shadow from the Steeple. Bloch wrote these when aged only 18. He was a regular friend and correspondent of HPL when aged only 13. Just because the writer is a schoolboy doesn't mean that he can't wheat sound mythos creations. I have several contributors to Dagon who are still at school, and though the English may be a little poor in places, their work clearly shows that they can write original and fresh mythos tales. If HPL had taken the game views as you self, failing to encourage such people as Bloch, Heald, etc., we would be left with a much thinner mythos than we have now. Indeed, it would not be so coherent or meaty. For the record, it was HPL who invented the ghasts and gugs, the dream quest of unknown Kadath, and not Chaosium. I find it quite strange that a reader of Dagon can find a Lovecraft invention pointless. I prefer the idea that the other gods are not evil, in that they have specific aims against humanity, but are simply disinterested in our welfare. If humans are worth exploiting, exploit them, otherwise ignore them unless they get in the way. This, I feel, is more the spirit of what Lovecraft intended. His horror came from the insignificance of humanity in his best stories. To 22, PAK oi believe that Lovecraft envisioned Yogzore ine HPL constantly described the Hyde Vise ethos tales. Witness the Dunwich horror. Paid he said site is constantly abused for mud up with the elder gods. Tai we 7 ween have got the other G's failed to read Lovecraft's Condon Inse would fit your description, or arms saying that you feel the horror of HPL's least fee humanity to these monstrous deities. Exactly. The worthless to these other gods proves to utterly BVT hem to be utterly evil. Alan Jeffrey, Glasgow. Why say, referring to abduction. I notice the interest says, 10 con Pete's 11, how come, in Otis that you're still us con say heat Pete's, Peats being con plus C #2 byte wo he ot net t egi foa say and weedy mega elephant. The other soul of a sag to increase the cond of big creatures, but that has an effect on Ichegel Chiel to makes the size. Pretty pointless as well, when I write up the stats. For NPC types, I must confess, I prefer to have my characters represent how I feel they your thinkball yellows lay a would have medium stats and a little more conpeats. After all, as the central opposition in the scenario, I didn't really want her killed by something as simple as a good kick. As far as using hit points goes, I now do. But when I originally wrote the C-key scenario, only the original rules existed, and I neglected to update then, sorry. I will in future use the new rules, which I admit are much of an improvement on the old ones. Og Andy Benison, Preston. PC, the Mythos Hierarchy was a very useful essay, especially for players new to HPL, A, and the Mythos. I'm glad that you treated Night Gaunts properly. Sika, thanks, it may seem a little bit of a contradiction what with having Night Gaunts as servitors of Deep Ones in this issue scenario, Fenland Fog. But I feel that the Night Gaunts may be used in this way, seeing as the Tembes have to bind and summon them. I do not feel that these creatures are being used incorrectly. I'm afraid that I wasn't overly impressed by tramps and beggars. It reminded me too much of the encounter and reaction tables that used to be so prevalent in this year. Lee D&D fanzines. A. Alan Jeffrey, Glasgow. A. G.K. Seeley Ole P.A.A. Afri Airt. A. Tatale A.A. Stingstat. For a Night Fellows, Con 9, W.A., I feel that the Tramps article wouldn't be terribly useful if a GM is ghoulie with descriptions to make playing COC at all pleasurable. Then she can make up a beggar on the spur of the moment without tables. It also seems like Spirit of the Mythos to have a Lovecraft intellectual upper-class snob hero H the grimy back alleys for information. S88 idea of the beggars and tramps was to provide an alternative NPC Poganevi contained within the rules books. I do not feel that they are part out of place in the Mythos, since Lovecraft used many of them in Tales, notably Zadok Allen in The Shadow over Innsmouth. Surely not all one-act COC are upper-class snobs. I have a couple of working-class chars and EV cite a gangster type. He's say AIJ Wallace Droy Works 2-tat A tetragramma on Ruate J Lay 068 Oim Souther Emenvel Saboth Agla AEX her Mbene Tahova, Va Adonai Sadai, Homovision Messias Esheree, Sts. Yes, well, there will be someone coming to see you in the Ailey Mark Morrison, Victoria, Australia. Arward CO87, I get up in the middle of the night, Norihide behind tombs, and I give people frights. He Bull 1F. And, Ski, don't you know I gotta be in bed by the Seuss. Did they let you coz ghouls just wanna have fun? Knee pluses, Kie Lurker. Re239 Street Talk, Carl T. Roarsby in the underworld zones of Backstreet America in the 20s. Slang or tree tally was commonly heard language form. Shocking in places, the street talk, devexoaz amongst the low-lifes and gangsters until it reached a vocabulary of sivers, thoy, and examples of alternative slang. These words could be heard in bars, brothel, and gambling dens, as well as in the homes of many of the working class. Gangsters would often use the street talk to discuss confidential information concerning crime or tip-offs. Here's an example of the street talk language, which to the uneducated could sound complete garbage. Hey Barfly, I hear you've been digging dirt about me, any Joey. Well, that's just a load of bows woes. So if I were you, I'd take back them dibs and dig out before you tomb this here devil's EMD 600, get my drift. In order for investigators, especially when undercover, to successfully learn all those back street clues, they would have to become learned in the language of the street talk. Mingling with gangsters and other underworld epicemens could bring to fruition many little unknown facts concerning cultists and criminals, which could in turn lead to their diabolical plans being thwarted. Learning the street talk. This language can be picked up by investigators wishing to move amongst underground or indeed underworld agents. For every day spent amongst the street life, the investigator will pick up 106 points of street talk language. As this language is only a form of a lang, investigators are advised to only use the street talk when on the streets and not in the company of family, employers, and, God forbid, aristocracy. However, becoming too learned in the language of the lowlifes does have its disadvantages. Any investigator with a street talk ability of over 7% may start to use the language in uncalled for situations, i.e., at home, while talking to the upper class, etc. The mere mention of a street turn amongst the upper classes will immediately make the investigator prone to suspicion, if indeed he is trying to mingle with the aristocracy as one of their own type. Distrust and immediate dislike are just two of the possible outcomes of this situation. Keepers are at liberty to use their own ideas if this situation occurs. Advantages of street talk. It is important for investigators to be able to mix with all types of people for reasons described previously. If investigators are not wise in the language of street talk, gangsters and the like would become uneasy in the investigator's presence, choosing to keep quiet about that little bit of information, which could lead to the blasting open of the lid to a complex murder case. The crook could become suspicious of the investigator, seeing as he talks strangely, and may suspect the investigator as being an undercover policeman. A command of the street talk would help extinguish all doubts, and the investigator could easily persuade the gangster that in fact he is just another lowlife. Below is a table with appropriate modifiers detailing the results of an investigator using @successful knowledge of the street talk. Dice hashtag all his salt. 0-10, the investigator succeeds easily. 7. The gangster/lowlife is convinced that the investigator is another gangster/lowlife. He tells the whole story and will help with any news. 10-20, the gangster believes the investigator, but will hold back any info. That may lead to reprisals upon himself. 20-35, the gangster trusts the investigator, but will not reveal any info, which connects himself or friends to the events in question. FEH, the gangster believes the investigator to be what he says, but keeps his mouth shut. Shack 160, i.e. not too sure, weak to think, will not take the investigator into his confidence. 61-75, distrusts the investigator, seems a bit too smart talking, ignores the investigator. 1685, distrusts greatly, tells his spies to find out what they can about the investigator, awaits a full report. R100, the investigator sticks out like a sore thumb. He better sheep his nose clean or else he might find himself dead down a darkened alleyway. His table is a result of a successful subsequent roll for these REA. Street talk still has a healthy APOMA alligator tithe E dice 101 CH of Miffy to suit the game AINs bow. Come read Taj eld alcoholic or punk. Tli Enge AL. Theodara with a gentil keep an eye on the investigator. He or she would not pawn question 4. Alt to pulling a knife. Plus, however, they made Decia J to send out throw at punchy. Ere the sangster will laugh euros doesn't inri etracy and dangero, and tell the sucker to honest pastime for investigators indeed. Iwi. Apart for Ixmi Tet Talk Tai Police Treasurin mixing with the Undesicabes Ning incorporates police work will bring along pent working with the police in one of ye phone the AE trace language. An investigator working on the C training with 100% knowledge of the evilly, the investigator may learn streets such towns as New York, Chicago, New Orleans. Squad may come away after hick police talk if he has lived in the ghetto, ants, etc. Naturally, this will depend there. The investigator was raised in the slums of the town. Roll a D4, A at he was, and an additional 1D10 street talk language ability is the E-trace not have any rural upbringing investigators, having a starting ability of street talk A. And this applies to investigators with wealthy parentage. Nari with some $50,000 is going to bring their kid up in OOE Nawi listed in AZ of some street talk examples. One hope that these will give few ideas for game situations, as well as some amusement, all of the words that are genuine examples of the language used by the underworld in the Rim Eid A.E. trace not so common today. These words are American in origin, and I doubt whether ye are used abroad. I hope that they can lend themselves to existing campaigns. Ain, photographs of wanted inno, whereby a female accomplice of the CO, blackmailing a male, whereby a AO, the te eft is the victim, into a compromising sexual F, Ilian point, the blackmailer enters and threatens exposure is CO, money is paid, 3 R's, man. Unless the AC or a ladies' man, the kid, a flashy dresses person, a house, N, a brothel, IOEOACON, a policeman or VA some tree 8 informer, P fees, nay a policeman hatchet, O taking part, a crime, and derived from the notion of passing bribe money under the table. Vacation, N, a prison sentence. Wake up, N, the very last day of a prison sentence. Weasel, N, an informer or sneak who courts superiors. Used from 1925 on. X, N, a signature colleague. An unknown person who wishes to conceal his or her identity. And criminal boss, Mr. Big. 6 Al XX, to double cross. Example, I know you gave me the XXX. O'Hara, pal Joey, 64. Yen Yen, N. A strong craving for narcotic drugs. Zap, VT, to kill someone. Further examples of street talk can be learned from the Dictionary of American Slang compiled by Harold Wentworth, Ph.D., and published by George G. Harrop and Co. Limited. Check out your library use A. By the way, the pun was unintentional. COC Miniatures, there are now several figure manufacturers cashing in on the boom of Call of Cthulhu, or for the needs of the COC player who likes and producing ranges of figures to add to the visual aspect of the game. Out now is an excellent range of Cthulhu miniatures in 25mm from Grenadier. These come in blister packs of 3 figures, which retail at £1.50 a pack. The range comprises of a set of excellent ghouls, which are designed in the same way as those dog-faced beings from the Mythos tales, police armed with the usual array of 20s firearms. A set of adventurers, which comprises of a female with pistol, Sherlock Holmes look-alike and professor type, Shuggoth/Ghost set, which I feel could have been much better, and a set of villain types, which includes an excellent Fu Manchu type skinny madman and fat occultist type holding what looks like a bird. At 50p a piece they are, as is the case of most figures, a little pricey, but nevertheless are an attractive addition to cozy adventuring. Cheered by Heroes Mini, the other range of figures suitable for cozy are those manufacturers who have just released a new range of adventurers in 20s garb. They are GH31 Scientist, GH32 Female in Coat, GH33 Female in Eve, Dress, GH34 Priest, GH35 Male in Jumper, GH36 Female in Long Dress, GH37 Man-Made Monster 50p, GH38 Hench 40 Heroic Aviator, complete with Biggles-type flying scarf. All these cost 45p unless where stated. These figures inted look excellent. Heroes are slightly larger than the Grenadier range, and once pay also have a new equipment range out which costs 6p each. They are Skull, Severed Hand, Head, Open Spell Book, the Necronomicon, Walking Stick, and Fire Axe. While I would nevertheless recommend this great think where you would need a walking stick range. Oh yeah, don't forget to order GH22 the Skylord. This costs 90p and is the spitting image of Cthulhu himself with bat wings, tentacled head, etc. By the way, Rob Marriott tells me that any ideas you Cthulhuoids have for improving the range would be very welcome, so when you order, I think you won't be disappointed. Tell him your creepy suggestions. How about some of the great race of Yeath, Rob? See the book for details. Herge's Miniatures 7, Waverly Place Workshop, Knots. Tell 0909-476-128. By the way, a catalog of heroes full range can be got for 50p, includes many other designs for FRP figures. Minch 26 Engi, U, Arian, Ebites, Vatkin, Geert, Clove, Elob TT, A, E Minute ESS. Gold-plated luxury. Still late, S and 19 seconds past 2 o'clock. Minch to his car, Vernier slammed the door, and AA and Cat out of hell, off down the country lane. Head his office by 3 o'clock, pausing on An Dozier, then sprint to the boardroom since suspected. Had malfunctioned on purpose to EC on extra late. Not only that, but he had collided with some A20 resulting in a scattered dirt in fool AME Dozier ul s his Jaguar into the garage at the end of the day. Vernier pack things had happened to him. A bad day. Yernier wondered why. Ing worse. 2 yellow green eyes shone from the Spie Adaus Adon. The black slits regarded him with an age-old curiosity. As Ridke of the 3 Damn Cat, before I strangle your moth-eaten. Where are you, a beast? Ched ec a resached through the paint tins and boxes far 10 minutes before, giving the A nation that it must have slipped past him as he had blinked. The only Exotique 7 on his day had been bad. Then his night was terrible. Vernier's sleeve 4403, a fact that the local tabbies were fighting and seeching out his A% illy. He went outside to scare them off, but they had already fled. He key-mined milk bottle, its contents seeping through the expensive lining of his foot. 4 turned to go inside, but his eyes glanced the sight of something that froze P front door, where the many scratches of what must have been some large annals lie sharp claws, forming the shape of a V. A trickle of fear slit thread down the back of his neck, raising the hairs, and milt with elamy sweat. Vernier's weak heart pounded hard and fast as he fought irrational thoughts that would make him run to the nearest church, and 7DP mind followed them. Surely, he told himself, Robert Vernier does not a 3D say ap ace a had definitely heard a growl behind him. His head would not turn. Fear and disbelief enveloped him. His hair neck prickled and quivered. Imagination, lack of Sletian's words screamed inside him. But still he did not blame then. A turned his head. What he saw was like the memory of dream. Unclear a Len B. Nellens there, horribly there. 2 huge Vires orbs, slitted black cami, and felt blackness above a slavering, thirsty mountain. 3p next he knew he was inside the hall, leaning against the door. A3 hurled the old boot which had been intended prid. Anus momentarily, allowing Vernier to jump in and see os hell ev una day. She would evil as all wives do, but she was of course disbelieve him, merry about his sanity, or at lency pieces was troubled, he airy ace even the little sleep that he did manage to gree as it drew. Sam T. Ode, headlights gleaming, Sam and Scar bearing down on him on some dark say, ence which turned Irin Yelly G, sir. The car's features faded except the headlights 7. A dark black slits K-lump, with road a rur crumbled black. He was floating in shadow, hovering above in his own family facially, at 2M at chess. From the shape grew at woman neha in it bese, above 4, conjuring memories of his paint that she held and cat. A very of woe man stretched out her arms, and vern dead cat. One mere you deu thy foe. Okay ape sure paras aran ray your soul knowest thou when he died. Now we are trapped stroyed your grandfat east 27. There is but one path for us. Now we are 8. The old one, revenge, you shall die at midnight tomorrow, Vernier. At 8:45 a.m., Robert Vernier stumbled from his front door in Plus garage. Halfway down the path, he stooped to pick up a brow leather jadit, the remnants of the old boot, tattered and shredded beyond easy recognition. Larry marks adorned the thick sole, now no longer so thick. Vernier discarded plus it continued on his way to the car. I am not mad, he shouted within himself. This is not happening. Somehow he wasn't convinced. Vernier arrived home that evening at 5:30. He poked had prepared, but ate little. Eat no than they rode, said Jackie, and you know what Dr. Benning said, Abe, your heart and overwork. Take your tablets, then you can have an early night. Me. No, shouted Vernier, almost overturning his plate. The mental maelstrom passed swiftly when he saw the fear in Jackie's eyes, and he added an apology in an A voice. After inadequate explanation, Vernier retired to the spare room and locked the Dewey. He checked, sealed, and rechecked the windows, then sat down in a large chair with hick back to the wall, staring at the small mantel clock opposite. He tried to read, but always his eyes were drawn to and transfixed by the clock, where seconds flowed into minutes and eventually hours. Vernier broke out in a cold sweat, but still he sat watching the clock as time, perhaps his life, ebbed away. 11:56 pi. This isn't true. I can't be serious. This couldn't possibly, Vernier babbled, shouted, screamed inside, but nobody was listening. 30 seconds to go. His heart was pumping so fast he thought it would burst from his chest. 20 seconds. Too fast, mercy, mercy, he babbled, now like a fool, closing his eyes. If the end came, he would not watch it, but still he counted the clockwork death. 5, 4, 3, no, please, no, E2, woe, 1, nothing. He opened his eyes and stared at the clock. Nothing. It had gone past midnight. Ha! What a fool, he told himself. He had been safe all along. He had cheated death. Now he was safe. 2 men carried a stretcher out of the house and placed it in the ambulance. Dr. Bennings followed them out and walked over to Inspector Armworth. Heart attack, Dr. Bennings told him, trying to ignore the flashing blue lights around him. All too common in these overworking executive types. Apparently his wife remembered that all the clocks go back 1 hour tonight, started to change them, went upstairs, and found the door locked. That expression on his face, though, he must have been in great pain at the end. You can even see the scratch marks he made on the door. Scurse you. Nyarlathot's the end. More Laya releases. Masks of Nyarlathotep is still due from the U.S. At the time of Payneys, an investigator tells me it's a nice big box set. But as with all nice big box sets comes nice big prices, £25 Frohem Frols. WD66 features The Horse of the Invisible Cost scenario based on William Hope Hodgson's tale. Very atmospheric, with several neat plot twists. Res Zine Plug, Blood, Guts, and Beer Issue 3 Inc., Chat, News on Magic AD&D Scenario, Letter Call, Article on Comics, and more. Per Baz Atkins, 3 Pembroke Crescent, Hove, Sussex BN3 SDH. E-Reviews, Don Turnbull Ice 50P from -28 Metai Games Fair 85 Gay E Annual. Games Fair event at Reading was held. I eated to Pop OE to Ave up with the latest news and chat sees I. That the event turned out to EE Epnist hobbyists emanated with me actually participating in several games sewn and for me at these events. 5 Pretty Morning S at W me arriving in the games Hajj and Vi clues concerning the whereabouts of possible contact. T Wiggy the notice board horrendous guise of one Peter Blanchard busy running a tune Severtal in the Gless I knew better. Could have sworn was being refereed with tated, which I after being Getty to purchase a copy of Monstrous P.E. Envoy into the bar. Which monstrosities lurked in this corner of eel I left for me to discover. There in the center was the editor elite table I could and the rest of the Imagine team. No sign of a mass crowd. Gathered around one. Afterwards, I returned to the games hall, where the usual as Lethera Irvy busy running through dragons with Plission Dragon Disc Ugate, Arachwas Soma and his chums drinking in the bar, leaving the zines free for the perusal. Asian Society gathered in the coffee bar once more. As usual, Trevor was being generous self and announcing everything is free. I saw one bloke eagerly bag with a handful of zines, which shall remain nameless, so as not to cause coffee bar soon began to fill with more editors, ranging from Paul Mason and TT look like several hundred Amazons, to Jez Keen, come off it you must know, at he is. I must say the zine stand looked quite anarchic, nothing out of the there, methinks. I gained a couple of new trades and had a chat with a few M's readying myself for the insult session at 8:00 p.m., aka Gygax seminar. 30, everyone knew Gygax wasn't going to turn up. TSR problems in the US. No ESO, we had to make do with the witty and often repetitive Mr. Turnbull. He dousely got off lightly due to the fact that the big insults had all been pre-D for GG, and no one had enough time to rephrase them politely enough to the N liked and loved Don. No news here that can't be found in School for Scandal. M is that scandal. The evening, at least I think it was Friday, was rounded off as at my anticipation in a tune scenario run by a drunken Trevor Mendham. As expected, I decided Poe add further insanity to the weekend, with a Eastland fog to a few Cthulhu freaks. The game runs smoothly, and T was pleasantay as to see that the excellent research by Steve Wan paid off. E. Shoggoth and the remainder, several falling Recian of Axon, that will teach the might arrested the local police on suspicion Maes, Seligal C. Optahan. Though I enjoyed it, A.E. Penn pissed off, for failing to discover exactly who or dick that you may think up, persuading Jez Keen to participate in Fenland Fog Way. This group of S. Runestoon's Nick Edwards, formerly of In LaFellows, played a little better, managing and idea roles. M.A. Ellenshire Village by a few successful dodgy much idea, as to 1-9 a leave was any okay. I might add that his is how -29 a wander around the games hall where a couple of other cock adventures were beach run, most notably an adventure from Shadows of Yog-Sothoth where one beat Tillkeeper was dishing out such arcane tomes as Necronomicon, Cultus des Ghouls, Nameless Cults, and De Vermis Mysterious as if they were cups of tea. Glads wasn't participating in that one. Saturday evening was finished with a quick of charades in which most of the editors and elite participated in. Patel Weekon added to the fallacy by suggesting that the fact that we were playing on the A meant that we were further demonstrating the fact that we thought we were edder and higher than everyone else and shouldn't play there. Jokingly, of course. The final day saw me flogging off a few Dagons to another lot of confused plastics. One visitor to the zine stand kindly bought all the zines, well, one copy of Cackney, and suggested we keep the change. Being the non-capitalist that you all love to hate, we accepted. Proceeds to the Dragon Meat Zine Stand Fund. Another quick S. Comfort and a game of the fanzine came rounded off the weekend. I look forward to the next one and think to myself whether Dagon will still exist. I hope so. By the way, that article was included as a space filler. If you found it boring, let me know. Cthulhuid Ramblings by Alan Jeffrey. What follows is a personal point of view concerning the game of Cosi, which was sent to me in a low-C Cosi ramble. Some of the points are quite interesting, so I have decided to print them. Naturally, I do not agree with some of the points raised below, but you may find them interesting and worthwhile. So without further ado, Cosi is a wonderful game, but for a kickoff, one of the main flaws of the system is its character generation rules. No matter what system you use, you end up with utter wimps. For instance, if you're an occult reporter delving into the mysteries of the past, you're going to spend a fair amount of time in a library. Say you make one successful journey to the library every month and so collect an experience check in library use. After a few years of this, you're going to be well over 100%. An average research chemist is going to be 200% plus with chemistry by the age of 40. Philip Marlowe must have 250% fast talk by now. As a result, I propose the following revolutionary character generation system. Roll the character stats, then write values for his skills and give the final result to the keeper to check over. Good, huh? Another subject for major change is the combat system. There is an episode of Callan where Hunter tells Callan to fire at a practice target 5 chest shots and 1 for the head, rapid fire. All 6 shots hit, and all within 4.1 secs, including the drawing of the pistol. This is, to say the least, difficult in Kesk, where the melee rounds seem to have been written on the assumption that all fighting takes place immersed in a vat of treacle, instead of giving each gun a shots per round stat. How about some nit of speed stat, averaging at say 2-3, so that a combatant can fire once at the beginning of a round, once on his dex, again on dex minus the speed of the weapon, dex minus 2x speed, dex minus 3x speed, and so on. Someone with a dex of 11 using a 3-speed pistol would fire at the start of the round, once on dex 11, again on dex 8, dex 5, and finally on dex 2. 5 shots in 12 secs does not sound appalling. Other actions could also be given a speed rating so as to allow quick characters more attacks than slower ones. This could easily end up with the same problem as Superworld, however, whose inordinately fast people can get 2-3 blows in before anyone else can react. It also begs the question of how to change the parry system to accommodate all these extra actions, perhaps using Stormbringer rules, which gives the first parry in a melee round full chance. The second is at -20%, the third at -30%, and so on. All of these problems are alleviated with the combat system Mark III Improvise. Who needs melee rounds? When you're fighting, you don't want to think about dex levels and speed ratings. You think about those devilish black claws reaching out at you, the weight of the pistol in your hand, the slimy tentacle wrapped around your leg, being dragged towards the gaping maw before you, and the red-black haze of unconsciousness as the brown-stained teeth sink into your hip. Sorry, did I say unconsciousness? Whoops, silly me, we all know that knocking E out in KSOC is impossible. The simplest way to change this is to say that once you -30 free Meech. There we go, much better now. No more dice rolling and Inktabble being confronted with eldritch horrors from beyond the pit. Ipapini, TF, you have any views which you feel concerned about within the rule, do send your ideas in. Published views, if of reasonable length, will et u copy of Dagon. I look forward to hearing your Cthulhuid ramblings. A 1 u Cruelhoid ramblings continued. Take your hit points, you are out for a couple of minutes. About 4d6 hit points x melee rounds seems about right. Down to 0 hit P, you are out for hours, even days. And once you have taken twice WAP points, why, you are dead. And finally, sanity rules. There's only one major change needed here, to throw out all the insanity section of the rules book. 4-tier action, a per Meech. Well, I must say that article above, certain OEA raised a fee disagree with the suggestion of throwing out the insanity rules CLP. Only mine helps make KOC the classic it is, and encourages investigators to steer clear of all those arcane tomes, spells and creatures that in most other games players would be only too eager to confront. The end of issue 7 approaches. I must say that I am very pleased with this issue. Let me know if you like the new format. Remember to keep your articles and LR artwork coming in. All published material gets you a free copy of Dagon, 47, Phi A, Dagon, Alt-HU, Aggie Pt Go To, all of those ghouls whose terrifying claws helped form this loathsome issue. Mark Gascoigne, Imagine Magazine, Josh Pinto, M with the Post, etc. BBC and ITV for the recent bravadosting of VCHA1, those fungi from YouGuth who bought this issue, and Games Workshop if they get round to paying the money they owe me. Oh yeah, and also Heroes Miniatures. Remaining means that the slimy staff contributing to this issue were Carl Ford, editor and writer, Stephen Wand, scenario. Peter F. Jeffrey, Simon Nicholson, Andy Benison, writers. Alan Jeffrey and Mark Gascoigne for their Cthulhuoid ramblings, and Nick Basie, J.D. Cadera, Gareth Jackson, Merc Carter, art. Next issue, Allays, The Legacy of Arthur Nye, a KOC scenario set in the eerie swamps of Louisiana. Computerizing Cthulhu, Cthulhuoid news, arcane tomes, and much more creepy stuff from the vaults of blackest evil. AES OOST Arpru N as OSU's Aben Grarin Arn as session A 6-issue subscription costs £5 Dagon is published bi-monthly. It looks as though there may be at decrease in price from next issue, so subbers may get 7 issues to their sub. Good A. Oreneo Reinasis, all correspondence, articles, subs should be sent to Carl Ford, 11 Warwick Road, a Twickenham, Middlesex 26S Duweed, YPLAMD Bop.